Here he comes. I'm always excited to come hunt Texas. I'm right in a big buck's home turf. I popped out right on the edge of that mowed strip, and I set up in a nice little cover. Oh, there's another 4x4 right here. Shooting light was fading fast. Where was that bigger buck? There he is, right there.
The time of the hunter and the tradition of the continent's greatest game. Now, the quest is here to discover where the buck waits for us. Join in hunting's ultimate test. Experience the skill and determination, the honor and respect, the disappointment and elation. All part of the call of the ultimate challenge, the American deer.
Wow, look at all the deer coming there. Those deer, they're a little edgy. It's not from me, it's from all that background noise, that energy development. There are literally crews of men working within half mile of me. They're edgy and they're taking notice, but they're not running away. They're just making sure what's happening across the county road isn't coming over here. There's another doe coming out right now. This trip, my Ram truck was headed to the Panhandle, the northern part of Texas, a part of Texas that sometimes gets overlooked for whitetails. I've landed in Texas, and boy, am I glad to be here, because if there's one thing that Texas is known for, it's, well, do you hear that in the background? It's oil. But it's also whitetails. Great whitetail hunting in Texas. I'm hunting with Rush Creek Guide Service, Danny Pierce, and we are in the Texas Panhandle near Wheeler, the new oil king of Texas. Now this hunt is going to be hard for the fact that it's the post rut. These bucks aren't running around crazy, showing themselves like they were a week or two ago. But the good thing about this is we have great habitat to work with and a good deer population. Right now, I'm going to forget about all this oil booming and get right back to whitetail hunting. So I guess this is where I'm calling home the next few days, huh?
It's a great area. We got the deer's home. They live right up in there. There's a big bunch of cover in there, you know, 300 or 400 acres. It's just impenetrable. They run this travel path. It's got just enough cover in it that they're comfortable running it, and you can set up many places depending on the wind in here that'll work for you. We got the wheat on both sides of it, and they'll be traveling back and forth.
So my goal should be here, maybe a 140 or better whitetail?
I would, yes. I'd hold out, you know, depending on your time, but we shoot 170, 180 class deer on occasion. 150 would be great, you know, nice 140s, nothing wrong with that if you like him, you know.
Well, I'm gonna get my rifle and start making some choices.
All right, let's do it. Our peak of the rut in this area is usually between Thanksgiving and the second week of December. We're having some warm weather, it's a little later, the rut seems to be winding down.
Now, post-rut doesn't mean you can't find rutting action. In fact, some of the best rutting can be right at the end of the peak rut. It's just the fact that you have to have the right weather. It's our first afternoon in the Panhandle of Texas. Now, what we're doing here is going to an old cut hay field. I got to get down there and set up because that sun is starting to set. The thing that I really liked about this property was the fact that there were winter wheat fields on either side of it. The deer, they were going to want to leave the cover eventually to get a bite to eat. Now in the post-rut, the whitetail bucks are worn out. They've lost close to 20% of their body mass. They want to eat, they want to sleep. They're going to go to the food, they're going to stay in cover. This is just how Danny described it. This old hayfield meadow is where the deer like to congregate before they travel to that winter wheat. Whitetails are critters of the edge. Always remember that. They're gonna come down those little edges whenever they can. My biggest dilemma right now is trying to find the right spot along this wide swath to make sure none get by me. This looks like a good spot. It's giving me a view left and right, plus straight across. And I've got just a little brush here and there out in front of me to screen me if I need to make a move. If anything surprised me about this region of Texas, well, it was the fact that there was so much agriculture. There was plenty for these deer to eat. Another surprise was the fact that it did hold some thick brush, like that South Texas area I'm more used to hunting. I can't believe those deer aren't out yet. It's perfect conditions, the temperature's dropping, the sun's setting. Nothing was there, nobody was around. But as the sun started to set, deer started to move. There's the deer. It's a doe. There's the fawn with her. They're starting to move now. There's another doe coming out right here. Oh, there's a buck. Here he comes. That's a nice 4x4 whitetail. He's kind of young. He's not quite a shooter yet. There's a lot of activity, still some daylight. I'm just gonna sit tight and see what else shows up. That buck, he's still pushing those does around over here. I still felt pretty good. I'd seen a nice buck. I'd actually seen some rutting activity, and that's always encouraging. So with that, I had a little bit of hope for the next morning.
The Buck Stops here is brought to you by Ford Trucks, built Ford tough. Nikon, the trusted name in optics. Sportsman's Warehouse, America's premier outfitter. Shop at one of over 30 locations or online at sportsmanswarehouse.com.
Now I stepped inside this timbered edge. The old hay meadow is right out there. What we can see in here is these whitetails are using this as a travel corridor. Look at this trail right here, and look what it leads up to right here. That's big buck sign. These are hard trees, and this buck is scarred it up as a rub. Only a big buck could do that. There's even some big buck tracks right here. Look at this right here. A fresh scrape. Okay, I found what I wanted to find. The sign that indicates a big buck's using this corridor. Now I want to get out of here and go look where I want to set up tonight. I'm always excited to come hunt Texas. It's a part of the country I don't get to very often. As a boy of the North Country, it's not always so easy to travel the entire length of the United States to get down here. Well, the Panhandle country, a part of Texas I've never been to before, really isn't that far. So the Ram truck was the perfect option to get me to the Rush Creek Guide Service.
This area here where Mark will be hunting is the east side of the Texas Panhandle. We're just north of I-40 in Wheeler County, Texas. I've been hunting and leasing ground over here for 30 years now. I've watched the deer populations just double and triple again, and we're in great shape for deer. It's a great place to hunt them.
Well, despite the heat last night, we had a little action. The buck that came out wasn't quite a shooter yet. It was a young buck, but he looked ruddy. Now this morning, not so good. These mornings after the rut, these bucks just aren't wanting to move. Afternoons are the hot ticket. I'm gonna set up on the same field, the old hay field, but this time I'm gonna move a little further to the left. I wanna go to a pinch point where the deer were coming out just a little heavier and there was a little more traffic there. Now, I better just shut up. Have you had enough of me? Let's get deer hunting. Getting into position on this old hayfield, it was ideal. I tucked into that lone little cedar. It provided shadows and a perfect backdrop to conceal me. I was ready for the evening hunt. Last night was a pretty good night. We only saw one good buck on this field, but Danny assures me this is the spot. It's just the heat. This heat every day has been unreal. Let's get settled in here. We're gonna see deer. It's just a matter of, are we gonna see the right buck or not? Just like the evening before, it took a little bit before does and fawns started trickling out. But once they did, the door was wide open and more started flooding out onto the old hayfield. Here comes a doe. There's a fawn. Boy, they're really spilling out tonight. Buck. Pretty good buck. Sure enough, a nice, big 5x4 buck. Actually, when I got looking at him, he was a 5x5 because of his split brow tines, came onto the field. He was interested in does and ready to rut. That's kind of the size Danny said I should be looking for right there. But he also said this area's got some bigger bucks. I'm just gonna let him chase around out here. He's not leaving right now, so see if anything else comes out. Come on, big buck. There's something over there. Looks like a big buck heading out in the grass there. Boy, it's almost out of shooting light, but I'm sure I just saw a pretty good buck over there. He was just cruising out of here. I may have to go down there and scout tomorrow and just see if I can find out a reason why a better buck might have went out that way. The buck was leaving. Shooting light was all but gone. But I had a little bit of hope, and I knew if I made a move, it was going to have to be toward that thicker grass and possibly a more aggressive approach to getting the panhandle buck of my dreams. One of the unique opportunities in Texas is the fact you can fill your freezer. And who doesn't like to fill their freezer with a few extra loins and back straps from a farm-fed whitetail? Texas, it's the birthplace of deer management, and I'm gonna celebrate that birth with a little bit of doe culling. Now, if you're interested in taking some extra deer off your property, you need to look up the Quality Deer Management Association. They have all kinds of information, guidelines, goals, and objectives to help you manage your property, whether you own, lease it, or just have the privilege to manage a piece of whitetail heaven. If you do decide to do some doe management, I suggest you take along your spotting scope. I usually have my Nikon spotting scope with me. Why? Well, in the late winter, I want to make sure I don't accidentally shoot a buck that's dropped his antlers. And any time of the year, I want to make sure I'm not shooting a buck fawn. Big buck just stepped into the road there. He's a little broken up. He's got a nice kicker off one of his points. It's going to be hard to get a shot with all those does. They're mobbed up. The ones in the grass, the ones down the sendero. I gotta make sure that they separate out, and right now, it's hard. I don't want to end up wounding one if my bullet goes through, and on these light-boned Texas deer, you never know. Well, that was a pretty nice buck. We actually came here to shoot a doe. And the instructions I was given by Danny was, if a good buck shows up, don't shoot, because he's got some other hunters coming. And I understand that totally. You know, I'd love to put some more backstraps in the Yeti cooler, but I want to make sure someone else gets a chance at a nice buck like that. Got a few more minutes, maybe a doe will show up. If she doesn't, well, I think somewhere down the road, I might be able to find another deer to put in the cooler. I popped out right on the edge of that mowed strip, and I set up in a nice little cover. There's a buck, just a little 2x2, he's coming in. Oh, there's another 4x4 right here. Look at this. Shooting light was fading fast. Where was that bigger buck? There he is, right there. The mornings have been nothing less than unspectacular. These bucks are leaving the feeding fields well before shooting light, and they're coming back into these thick, brushy areas to bed for the day. So we're gonna try a little rattling. It's one of the few things you can do in these after sunrise time periods to see if you can't just pique a little interest and get a buck to at least come out of his bed and poke his head out of the brush. Oftentimes in the post trot like this, it's just a Hail Mary, but a Hail Mary, it works for Peyton Manning once in a while. I'm gonna give it a try. The panhandle of Texas differs just a little bit from other parts of Texas in the fact that it has a little more rich, abundant choices for agriculture. The soil's just a little better here, a little more rainfall than you'll probably find in the south part of Texas, so the deer have more to eat.
We have not been beat up by the droughts near like they have downstate, and I feel sorry for some of the guys. I've heard some real horror stories from some of the guys down south trying to hunt. We've had a great year this year. The deer are fat, they've got great antlers, they're in really good shape, and praying for rain again now, but we're in good shape. Much different than a lot of Texas. Texas is a huge state, and we're the lucky ones up here.
We're all trying to get in as much hunting time as possible. We all lead busy lives, but that doesn't mean you should just rush to your tree stand, your ground blind, or your ambush point. Take your time, actually hunt your way in. Here's another thing you can do. If you feel safe enough and there aren't a lot of other hunters in your area, you can use a grunt call to mimic and make yourself sound like a deer moving through cover. Just a couple of soft grunts and you'll fool any deer. He'll think you're just another buck walking around, and he may even come in closer for a sure shot at a smoking close distance. I'm right in a big buck's home turf, and I'm hoping that the buck I saw last night, I've just caught a glimpse of him. A big, wide buck is gonna come out here again. That's the type of buck I'm looking for. Now to get him, I'm gonna have to go aggressive. Hunt this thick, brushy cover, look for a shooting lane where I can have a shot out into the field if he shows up there, but especially a shot into this tall stuff where he was hanging out last night. This love grass clumps up and it provides all these little snake alleyways to sneak through. I popped out right on the edge of that mowed strip, the one I hoped the buck would eventually poke his head out into, and I set up in a nice little cover. There's some does right there. There's a buck. He's just a little 2x2. He's coming in. He's coming in from the other side. Oh, there's another 4x4 right here. Look at this. They wanted to come out late tonight for some reason, but the temperature is really getting cool. They're cruising back and forth. Shooting light was fading fast. I was getting a little nervous now. Where was that bigger buck? It's getting late, but this is about the time when that bigger buck slipped down that edge. You better hurry up. My Timex is ticking. There he is, right there. Come on. It was him. A wide buck, a heavy buck, and a mature bodied buck. No, he won't step out of there. There he comes. He's coming right there. Step out. There he is. He's walking out right now. Vaughn is in the way. There she goes right now. Okay, put your head up. Going right down in that tall grass over there. Man, what a few tense moments. They were just crisscrossing right there. It was like a traffic jam of deer. He's in that tall grass. We're losing light. It's getting dark. I want to get over there and find him, but before it gets too dark, and I can't find him in that tall grass.
The Buck Stops here is brought to you by Ford Trucks, build Ford tough. Nikon, the trusted name in optics. Sportsman's Warehouse, America's premier outfitter. Shop at one of over 30 locations or online at sportsmanswarehouse.com.
When I first went to look at him, I was totally off base where he had run into. I don't know. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna put my headlamp on and keep looking. He's right here. I shot him 5-10 minutes ago. He's gotta be here. There were actually several strips of grass where he ran into or towards. I picked the wrong one. I walked right past this buck in the dark and spent 10 minutes or more fumbling around until it was almost black before I backtracked and found him in the closer strip of grass. Everything is bigger in Texas. Let me clear my gun here. Boy, I am excited, but at the same time, I feel like such a doof. I've been looking for this buck for at least 10 minutes or more. This grass, you can see, it's at least waist high or up to my armpits, and this buck fell down in it. I couldn't find him. Here he is, right in plain sight. I'm hunting in the panhandle of Texas, Skillet Country, and this is a grand slam breakfast of a buck, a big, mature panhandle buck. Look at these bases on him, heavy duty, big curving brows, and sweeping main beams. I would come back to the panhandle country of Texas in a heartbeat and team up with Rush Creek Guide Service. Why? Well, you have the option for a fully guided hunt. You have the option for a semi-guided hunt. And you definitely have the chance for a big mature whitetail. Not only a Texas whitetail, but one that has just a hint of that Kansas and Oklahoma big antler characteristics. I passed up a bunch of younger bucks, and that's what happens when you pass up those younger deer. You can shoot a mature buck like this. That horny interlock bullet in my American whitetail ammunition, it did the expansion trick. What a great ending to a Texas hunt. I passed up some young bucks, but that's what QDMA is all about, managing deer, letting those younger bucks grow up to be bigger bucks. And well, my Texas panhandle buck, he was bigger. I was going to be pretty happy on my way home looking at that big buck in the bed of my Ram truck.